Good morning and hello everybody. Welcome to the IT-ROI PPM Idea Boss webinar. Today we're going to have a new product announcement and launch what we hope is going to be the newest of many of our great software products at IT-ROI Solutions. We know you're all very busy out there, and we're grateful that you would take the time out of your day to join us for this webinar today. And just for those of you that don't know, I'm Christopher Claunch, the VP of Sales and Marketing, and I guess I will be your Toastmaster today, the host. And so being the host, I think I'd like to start off by knocking out a couple of housekeeping items while everybody gets joined and settled into the webinar. You will find on your GoToWebinar control panel on the lower right-hand section, there's a question section that you can expand, and I would encourage you to put your questions in there as you think of them as we're presenting and also doing the demonstration, and I will interject into the presentation and the demonstration to answer those at just natural segues. Hopefully that'll encourage some additional questions and answers throughout. And then at the conclusion of the webinar, we have our creative director go through and take out all of the ambiguous ums and ahs that I'll have in the presentation today and any downtime, and hone it so that when you get the replay video tomorrow, you're able to share it with your colleagues in the shortest possible fashion, and you'll also be able to listen to all of the questions and answers that come through. Today we are going to be fortunate enough to have our founder and president, Federico Pena, the creator and lead architect of our highly skilled development team, and he's uniquely qualified to present as he's been working in the CA PPM, and before that CA Clarity, before that CA NICU, and before that I think it went all the way back to NT4 DOS or something, but he's been in the PPM space for a very long time. And so in introducing Federico, I'd like to discuss a little bit about our mission. And Federico, can you move the, can you click the slide, please?
I'm sorry, Christopher, I had the thing on pause.
Oh, okay. The mission at IT-ROI Solutions has become and evolved to we make PPM simpler. We discovered a long time ago that PPM as an enterprise practice was a beast. It was ubiquitous, if you will, very complex. And we were working as a group of highly skilled PPM consultants in the environment, helping enterprise clients with complex integrations and migrations, mass data extracts and loads and exchanges. And parenthetically, I document here that we still provide those services today. But what we discovered is working with our clients in this growingly complex environment is that the promise of making PPM easy or simple was simply not achievable any longer. So what did we do? Well, here at IT-ROI Solutions, we decided to try and make PPM simpler, one villain at a time. So before I just turn this over to Federico and go to my thoughts on ideation, I'd like to go over our agenda today and let you know that what we're going to cover today is what is ideation, who the ideation component is for, the introduction to the actual software solution Idea Boss, how that Idea Box works and how it fits in to some of the offerings that we already have. We're going to get a look into the innovation roadmap today, PPM Studio Boss, XQ, Zog, and Query Bridge, which I think one day we'll decide on an actual name for. And then to finish that up, Federico is going to provide us with a live demonstration to show how that fits and how it actually works into the Clarity PPM environment. And again, throughout this entire process, I really encourage you to interact and ask your questions. Again, I'll slow down Federico at the right spots and have him answer those questions as we go. And then I just wanted to give my perspective on ideation, because I'm very excited about it, being able to be in charge of sales and marketing and deliver the idea. But my earliest memories of ideation was the day that Steve Jobs returned to Apple after being ousted by the board and the person he hired, John Scully, and instead of making an announcement to the entire organization or the world, he went down to design and development. And if I can grossly paraphrase here, he said something to this nature: stop what you're doing, stop what you're working on. All I want you to do is create something. I want you to create anything. It doesn't even have to be technology. Just create something you believe in. And that being said, that is what Federico has chartered us at IT-ROI to do with respect to making PPM simpler. The PPM Boss Suite, some of the other software tools have been genned as a result of us using this ideation, which he'll be explaining. And in my estimation, the things that I like about it is that it incorporates things like crowdsourcing and game theory, and brings the entire organization, the entire enterprise into the picture to get a look, to make a contribution into what the way that I see it was previously just the PMO. So, it really looks like I think we've got as many attendees as that we'll get, and everybody seems to have gotten settled in. And what you guys are really interested in is getting ready to innovate and create, curate, and ultimately communicate your ideas and how those really integrate into the Clarity environment. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to turn over the, if you will, the good part of the presentation and also the live demonstration to, again, our founder and president, Federico Pena. Federico, you ready to go?
Yeah, thanks, Christopher, and I want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. As Christopher mentioned, what I want to do is I want to actually take a step back and have a brief description of what ideation is. And I want to describe it as pre-PMO. I mean, I know most of you are in the Clarity world and you're familiar with the idea component inside of a PMO tool set, but I want to bring it back a step, and I want to actually show how we can actually utilize this tool set to facilitate or to help your organization innovate. So in reality, that really is what ideation is a forum for companies or organizations to innovate, right? So it's not just idea generation, right? It requires organizing, categorizing, ranking, evaluating ideas. So at some point, the organization can take actions and develop new products or create new services as needed. Then this brings us back to the question of who should really be involved with ideation, right? Because, I mean, there are lots of pieces that need to be involved. First thing we need to do is we need to align the PPM strategies with resources, right? So you can maximize the capacity to drive innovation, right? So you want to amplify the voice of your customer. We now have to get customers involved. And you want to paint a complete picture of what's hot and what's not. So for this, we need to bring everyone into play into the ideation component. So whether it's customers, partners, vendors, executives, right? And then we exponentially want to extend the reach of brainstorming across the global enterprise and the global marketplace. Because, as the saying goes, two heads are always better than one. So we want to take advantage of what people within inside of the organization and people outside of the organization are thinking, right? And then this allows us to objectively measure market and demand management to ensure that you deliver high value offerings and ensure ideas can be evaluated against strategy, resources, and costs. So, like I said, all of this really is happening before it gets into the PPM toolset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into really how our products can help, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our Boss suite of products. So in this particular case, we're going to be talking about the Idea Boss, but really this product is related within Christopher's initial point that was brought up, which is to try and make PPM simpler. So how do we try and make PPM simpler? Is by bringing PPM into a common infrastructure or common platform that people are familiar with. And we selected SharePoint because SharePoint is extremely common across the enterprise, and I would say that 99% of the organizations have SharePoint already built in, as Microsoft did a very good job in promoting that product by giving it away for free initially to clients. So, we have the document boss and the portlet boss that allow you to display data into SharePoint from Clarity, and then we have some other components on the right-hand side, which are the task, scrum, and timesheet boss, which allow you to bidirectionally change task and timesheet information within inside of Clarity. But today what we're going to be discussing is the idea boss. So think of this prior to anything that happens within inside of Clarity. And we think of all of our products as a low total cost of ownership because of the speed that it takes for us to get these products implemented onto a client and how quickly a client can actually get results from implementing these products. And that in turn just provides a big ROI into your organization. So I'm going to sort of go through and explain what we're going to be demoing today and how this particular product is going to work within inside of SharePoint.
Hey Federico, this is Christopher. I was just thinking that this is I've gotten some questions around not just how it works, but really what we are providing. So if you could maybe in this particular environment address that question, what are we providing? Are we providing an environment and an integration, a forum, whatever, while you're talking about how it works, kind of what it is at the same time? I think this is a great slide that can address that if you could do that.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So I want to spend a few minutes, giving an ideation of, as it pertains to Clarity users. As I mentioned before, normally the PMO office is only aware of ideas long after the ideation workflow is complete, right? So there's lots of different steps that need to occur within inside of the approach for ideation for it to be successful, right? There's what's called the planning or the pre-work, right? The pre-work really is defining the topics. So what do we want to have, or what do we want to discuss around ideation, right? So all of this is around the finding out from your customers, your partners, and your vendors or executive management what it is that we want to have ideas around, right? And then the next big step is identifying the participants, because you categorize a particular topic of ideation. Well, now you need to define who you want to actually brainstorm around, right? So whether it is customers or vendors, or you want to have two internal staff or external staff, right? Because there's a big difference if you want to change the way your products look and feel is, as opposed to, if you want to do something internal where you say, I want to change the way the lunchroom is, right? And so once we have identified the participants, we want to establish the goals and timeframes for these particular ideas, okay? And at this point, I guess, we're ready to bring them into crowdsourcing. So we've defined who we want to bring into this particular ideation component, and now we want to have people enter ideas. So people enter ideas, people collaborate on ideas, right? And that's where the post-event of the ideation is, which is really ranking, evaluating the ideas, and then taking action. So at that point, this is where the ideation component decides at the taking action point is, does this particular idea fall into the CPA, PPM as an investment, or does it fall outside of that, right? So it's something where we facilitate and we encourage participation by providing a full collaborative approach inside of SharePoint. So you can share this across any type of user groups without actually having to give them rights to Clarity. Because at the moment, what happens with the ideation component within inside of PPM tools is that it's really limited to the people that have access to PPM, right? So that's usually whether it be your project management team or, some high-level administrative staff. And those are usually the people And that usually happens long after the ideas have been really ranked, whether action needs to be taken or not. Maybe that was a little long-winded, but I hope that answers the question. All right, so now
you know I like long-winded.
Take a couple of seconds. I'm going to take a couple of seconds and just quickly discuss what our innovation roadmap is. So just so you guys are aware, at the beginning, a couple of slides ago, we showed sort of our BOSS tool set, which is our Sharepoint to Clarity connector tool set. Then one of the next products that's coming out, and it'll be due out at the end of first quarter of this year, is what's called the Studio BOSS. And if you think of the Studio BOSS, make the word BOSS synonymous with SharePoint and Studio synonymous with Clarity Studio. So what we've done with the Studio BOSS is we're giving people the ability to lay out objects and attributes within inside of SharePoint and make them bidirectional by following the same rules that Clarity Studio follows. So this really gives us the ability to make anything that you like within inside of Clarity completely bidirectional. And this is going to be probably one of the largest releases that we've had to date on the BOSS suite components. And the next one is, I'm sure most of you are aware, and this is going to be very handy for your technical team. The Zog client has been removed from version 13.3 and greater inside of Clarity. So we've generated a couple of different versions. We've generated a web version as well as a client version that allows end users to utilize Zog with a GUI. And not only does it allow you to do one XML at a time, it allows you to do batch of XML. So if you need to do 5 or 10 or 15 XMLs at a time, you basically just put them into a folder and you say run, and it'll run one after the other in alphabetical order. So it'll really save your admin team a big amount of time by downloading this, and it's available for free at zogbridge.it-ROI-solutions.com. Make sure that they're aware that it's HTTPS to make sure that link works.
Hey, Federico.
Yeah.
I've got a question that I think probably it can be addressed on this slide. The question is, when Studio BOSS is released, can you incorporate it into Ideation?
Actually, that's a great question, and yes, and once I get into the demo a little bit, we'll show how we can actually configure. We've configured the fields from the ideas within inside of SharePoint, so you can actually populate the idea fields. But for companies that have customized their idea object, the Studio BOSS is a perfect fit for that. It'll allow them to actually bring all of those custom fields and attributes directly into the ideation component. So they'll be able to fill all of the data that they need directly inside of SharePoint before it gets fed into Clarity. That's a great question for here.
Thanks.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get into the actual demo of the ideation component.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask a question before you start. What is the query? Is the question.
The query bridge. So
I thought that's what that question was.
So the query bridge, what it does is, and this is very handy for on-demand clients, what it does is it provides an interface for people to be able to query the database directly without actually having to have a VPN or database connection. So it queries the database through the API layer. So let's say your technical team has a need to run a query on investments or something, or they get a request from the PM office. Well, they can type a query, a standard SQL, and it'll automatically turn it into NSQL, go through the API layer, and give you the results. So super, like I said, it's extremely handy, especially for those people that are on demand that need to VPN in, and sometimes you don't want to VPN in to just get a couple of minor records out. So, and if they need more description, we can definitely send them a white paper on that, on the query bridge.
Okay, that I'll need somebody to translate that for me too, so thanks for the answer. And I'll let you get back into the demo now.
All right, so here what we've got is I've got the ideation component, and what it is it's a location where we can generate ideas. So here we have, and this is standard SharePoint functionality, so we have idea categories. So let's say we want to add a new category, so I'm going to say I want to do query bridge since we were just talking about it. So now that we've got these categories, and this is, as I mentioned before, it's one of the pre-work components of ideation, right? Defining the topic that you want people to be able to build upon, right? So with inside of here, we can come and say, well, and this, the next step would obviously be identifying the participants, but because this is at the site level, you can specify which participants or which groups of participants can be added to this component of ideation. You can have multiple different groups, and you might even have one different group per category, right? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take and create a new idea. And I want to add this to the corporate category. And you can add multiple categories if you like to this. So now, as you can see, we have different votings for within inside of the idea. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the corporate category so we can find the idea. So now I can vote on these ideas, which gives you the ability to rank, right? So now we want to actually rank and evaluate that particular idea. And then management can come in and say, well, let's take a look and see what the best ideas are. So we can go to the top ideas and we can see, hang on here, I want to go to the home. I was in the corporate category. So I want to actually find the top ideas throughout the whole enterprise, right? And then I can say, well, this seems to be the most popular idea. So we can add more information, or we can reply to this so people can actually collaborate on this. So I'm going to say, yes, I agree. This is a great idea. I like this idea. I actually want to post this idea to Clarity. So here I say, I have an idea ID, right? The subject's an easier way, and then I have all of the fields that are available inside of Clarity, so I can populate them directly from here. So I want to say that this is a major project, compliance. This is the idea. I don't want to fast track it. I click Save. So now, what I want to do is I want to come here and I want to look for that particular idea here. So easier, I'm going to look for easier. So here we can see that this particular idea is now being created inside of Clarity. Okay. So if I want to actually now associate this idea, I'm going to change I want to associate this idea with inside of SharePoint. So now I can now associate this idea back into SharePoint. So now you notice that this idea is now associated to SharePoint. So if I click on this SharePoint tab, what it does is it will automatically create a SharePoint site directly from that initial idea, and then we can promote this throughout the Clarity lifecycle and then it automatically gets promoted through SharePoint. So I'm just going to give this a couple of seconds while it generates the idea. But what I want to do is I want to take a couple of seconds right now and pause to see if there's any questions that somebody might have. Christopher?
You know, we get this next question quite often, and the question is it on-demand compliant? I know you just mentioned that.
Actually, I didn't mention it, but yes. So we utilize the API layer for all of our integrations. Therefore, because we utilize the API layer, then yes, everything that we do is on-demand compliant for everything.
Okay. And oh, this is a great question right here. Can ideas be added on a mobile device?
Yes. So SharePoint is, well, with SharePoint 2013, SharePoint 2013 is now fully mobile compliant. So yes, everything can be done via a mobile device.
Okay. That's excellent. And then there's a question here that says, seems a lot like CA's idea vision is just in SharePoint. How is this different than that?
I guess the main difference is the platform that we're on. So we utilize, and I'm not 100% sure of what platform the ideation component utilizes, but we utilize the SharePoint platform, which, you know, in turn allows you to use existing infrastructure, because most, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the reason we picked SharePoint is because it's a common platform that 99.9% of clients already have.
So it brings in the rest of the enterprise, or to have an opportunity to provide ideas into the if you will, PPM environment that might not otherwise have access.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess you bring up a good point, which would be, you know, not necessarily licensing, but obviously there's no real licensing requirements for SharePoint since you already own that tool set. And also, we don't know, I don't know exactly what the actual user management is inside of the ideation component, but inside of SharePoint is something that you already control. As you know, if you own SharePoint, you already have a security model for that tool set. So hopefully that helps.
I'll keep an eye and see if that answered the question. Nikki, if that answered your question, let me know. If not, we can follow up with some additional answers if you have more questions to base on that. Federico, there's let's see, there's a few more questions here. Can our company just get the ideation component without getting the whole suite?
The answer is yes, you absolutely can. The only thing is the ideation component really ends at creating the idea, as I'm showing here. So once we get into mapping it back to a SharePoint site, which is what I'm displaying here, this now becomes part of the document boss functionality. But yes, you can definitely buy it without, you know, you can utilize the ideation piece and tie it into Clarity without the need of buying the whole suite.
Okay. There is a question on the, I think it goes back a little bit to the TCO side, the total cost of ownership. And it says, how easy or how long is the, we'll call it an installation roadmap?
Well, Christopher, you know that I always get myself into trouble. Usually the SharePoint installs are fairly painless, and I can see some of you in the webinar can definitely vouch for this, since you know some of you already own most of our tool sets. I would say that you know the install of this, you're looking at a couple of days to get it implemented in your development environment. If I was to say your 3 dev test prod, we're looking at a week max.
Okay. I have a question going to the Zog bridge now, Federico, and It's basically asking if we produced a Zog bridge as an alternative solution to the Zog client since it was being removed, and I would say that my answer to that question would be making it available or having it remain available because it is such valuable functionality. But do you want to expound on that just a little bit, Fed?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say we replaced it because the Zog client, after all, did have limitations in the sense that you couldn't really deal with large objects or large Zog files. Anything that was over 10 megs was really taxing on the application as, the Zog client went through the application layer to be able to communicate with clarity, as opposed to what we're doing is we go directly through the API layer, so we do all of the Zog processing via SOAP within inside of our tool set. And we also provide the ability to batch, which the Zog client didn't really allow you to do, which means if you have 10 XML files, you have to copy paste each one individually. This one here is that you specify a folder for the in, a folder for the out, you click run, and it'll run one after the other. But yes, we did it because we needed something internally for our consultants to use. So we wanted to facilitate our consultants' lives, and then we thought, why not make this available for all of the other clients to use?
And so in keeping in really in step with our our mission to make PPM simpler, oftentimes it comes from a mix of our partners and our customers and our internal Clarity consultants and engineers, and we're looking for a way to make a complex process simpler. So the next question, and again, this is just another great question. Federico, it's asking about how we make the ideation component public for customers, partners. How does the interface work so that we can really get out there and use some of that wide-stretched crowdsourcing?
So as I mentioned during the demo, the ideation piece is really built at the site level. So, and I'm speaking specifically within inside of SharePoint. So SharePoint has the concept of what is called SharePoint sites. So what you can do is you can share those SharePoint sites and you can define the security at the site level. So you might want to define some, one site for a particular topic internal. And then, another one that could be external. So it'll allow all of your external users to be able to map into that particular SharePoint site. And then, all it is that you need to do is you need to get your SharePoint admins to make sure that they give access to the correct people that you want to give access to.
Okay, excellent. Question about versions, Federico. I imagine that since we developed in this version, it is what are the versions are Clarity supported, and I think that would be going back. So what versions back would be supported?
Yeah, we're going back to version 12 and greater at the moment, 12.0. Okay.
If anybody out there is still using 8, you might want to give me a call so we can help you update the Clarity environment. A question for me, I guess, how does licensing work? All of our tools we make available to the enterprise, and so all of your environments are available to everybody once you deploy them. And this is a question that may have already been answered, but since it's in my panel here, it says, what does IT-ROI actually provide for ideation?
I think, I think this question was the first one that you asked me when we were talking about the slide.
Yes, yes.
The one that I long-winded about. Hopefully that's the same question, and it's already been answered.
Okay, so. Well, that'll kind of play into the next question as well. It's asking if it's been recorded and if it'll be available on demand. Our creative director will be, again, as I mentioned very early in the webinar, maybe before some people logged on, that this is being recorded, and Mark will go ahead and parse out all of the the unnecessary pauses, ums, ahs, and other things that need to be taken out, so that there'll be a short version available sometime tomorrow afternoon. I hope I didn't commit Mark too quickly. We have one again for you, and it says how simple or what challenges were faced when configuring the integration between SharePoint and Clarity PPM. I guess that goes back quite a ways.
So, I mean, we encountered lots of challenges when we were building the tool set, but at the moment, as I mentioned before, the installation is really painless. You know, we've had clients installed up and running in as quick as 2 hours.
See, there you go, Federico's. Getting yourself in trouble with saying how quick the implementation could be.
Well, I mean, we've had clients. I mean, it really does depend on the red tape at the client side, but usually it's really painless.
I hope that answered that question. Obviously, initial development, complex, a lot of discovery. A lot of dead-end streets. But now that it's been up and running and in production and operating in many clients across the globe, seems to be integrated very well. And I often tell Federico it's great to be able to sell a product that we don't have to face a lot of, if you will, roadblocks after deployment, that most of them are pre-deployment and have to do with getting the SharePoint team and the Clarity team together with the same mission, and after that it seems to go pretty well. So Federico, as it stands right now in both of my panels, as far as I can see, I think we've answered all of the questions that have been asked. And so I don't know if you want to maybe just have a few closing words, and I guess we can wrap this up and keep to the short format that we seem to have the most success with, keeping people engaged for.
I want to thank everybody for attending, first of all. I really appreciate everyone's time, and if you guys have any questions or anything, please do not hesitate to contact myself, Federico, or Christopher. Emails are on the screen, so feel free to send us any questions or any other questions. And as Christopher mentioned, this is being recorded, so we will be posting the recording and sending a link to everybody that attended, as well as everyone that registered.
So that will be it for everybody. Thanks again for joining. I look forward to answering any further questions you guys might have, and we will see you on the other side. Thanks so much.